following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
This is Talkin Cowboys. Streaming live from the Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
Handoff, Elliott plowing to the goal line. Barry, sacked by Lawrence. Prescott keeps it, and he bangs it in for the touchdown.
And now your hosts, Isaiah Stanback, Heckma Harrison, Rob Phillips, and Kyle Yeomans.
Ladies and gentlemen of the internet and of the podcast app and of all over the world, welcome into a Victory Monday edition of Talking Cowboys here from the SWBC Mortgage Studios at the Star in Frisco as the Dallas Cowboys take down the San Francisco 49ers for win number 5 of the 2020 campaign. 41-33, the final score from AT&T Stadium last night. We're going to break it all down for you here on Talking Cowboys, presented as always by the great folks over at Geico. Kyle Yeomans with you alongside our resident Super Bowl champion Isaiah Stanback. We've got Cowboys insider Rob Phillips down in the bottom right-hand corner and professional football analyst Heckma Harrison. And along with your title, Heckma, I'm going to go with professional tree decorator because he's got his bet tree paid off and in the left side of his screen. It's a little bit bigger than your other one, Heck.
Yeah. Hey, first of all, Kyle, do not get me in any trouble with that title, okay? Because all of the credit to decorating this tree belongs to my daughter Kia and my wife Nikki. So this is their creation. They did this. So
fantastic.
Kudos to my daughter Kia and wife Nikki.
Kia, looks like Rockefeller Center back there, man.
Does.
Looks like Times Square. I love it.
You know, Kia is the real star of the family, but also not to mention, I mean, Isaiah, you're pretty much a star for getting. Heckma, you said those are Bluetooth lights. You're working with Bluetooth on this tree. So how does that even work?
This is you can hook this thing up. It goes. You can sync it with your phone, and you could play it with your music. So I was thinking, having a little John Christmas going this weekend.
Gosh.
Yes.
Just know it's on.
Well, Isaiah lost the bet. Isaiah lost the bet. He shipped the tree, and Heckma put it up this weekend. Looks fantastic, buddy. You look very festive here in the week of Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone, no matter what you celebrate. But
yes.
Rob, the Cowboys are celebrating a win yesterday and an opportunity to stay alive in the playoff hunt, at least for another week, because Washington lost to Seattle. Big time week coming up this week in really how things are going to shape out in the NFC East. But Rob, what did you think about yesterday's matchup with the 49ers and how the Cowboys came out on top?
You're telling me that game got flexed?
Yeah.
Really?
Right.
A game that ends on a kickoff onside return for a touchdown and then a Hail Mary. NFL decided to flex that game. For shame, NBC. For shame. You missed a good one between two teams that are really struggling, and that's why, I mean, half of us picked the Cowboys, half of us picked the 49ers on Friday, and I think it's because they're, in a lot of ways, the same team. They're flawed. They have injuries. They have problems taking care of the ball, and that was the difference. Cowboys now with a +7 turnover ratio in their last 2 wins, a 2-game winning streak now, first of the season. I saw on last week the New York Times statistical model said the Cowboys have a 1% chance to win the NFC East. Apparently, that has risen to 5%. So It is still a chance. You're telling me there is a chance.
5%.
5%.
You know, I would disagree with the computer on that one, and I'm not a mathematician by any means, but the fact that you have Washington going up against Carolina this week, which is a winnable game for Washington, but it's very losable, especially if Alex Smith is unavailable. And then the Cowboys, somehow, if they can take down the Eagles, I think the Cowboys are sitting in the driver's seat going into Week 17. But we can talk about that a little bit later on. Isaiah, what did you think about this offense yesterday and kind of how Andy Dalton and that offensive line responded whenever San Francisco brought the heat, especially at the back half of the second quarter and then right after that halftime break?
Yeah, I feel good about it, and I just want to acknowledge the fact that, I know Heckman just alluded to you prior to us coming on the show, that Kyle, that you were listening to the E40 versus Too Short versus.
Darn
and,
right.
obviously you were listening to E40, but the Cowboys were listening to that 40 burger because they got that 40 on there. But no, these guys play pretty doggone well. They play pretty well, man. I'm actually proud of these guys. They've come a long way. This chemistry has continued to build. Every week we've had some form of adversity. Every week. I don't think we've since week one. I don't think we've had our entire squadron out there. As I've been watching The Mandalorian. But yeah, I think with obviously we go into this week and Zeke's out and Pollard has to step up. He gets 60-some yards rushing, 60-some yards receiving. Kellen Moore continues to expand his repertoire. He brought out some stops that I haven't seen him do this year that were within the frame of our offense. It wasn't no crazy reverses and reverse passes and all that. It was just some misdirection. And he pretty much been watching the film against our defense because he did exactly what works against our defense against this team. So very proud of these guys, man. They did what was required to get a win, and not only that, these guys play complimentary football. I know we talked about it in a post-game show yesterday, Kyle, but complimentary football. Your defense gets you the ball, guess what? Go score. Right now, that's a give-and-take relationship. Nobody just wants to be in a relationship where you're just receiving.
Heckma?
No, that's a tough relationship to be in, Isaiah. Well, look, I'm not gonna be the Debbie Downer for this victory because we got one, right? We got this victory. It was tough. There were a lot of momentum swings in this game. Offensively, I just like the fact that we were set in position a lot of times just with a short field, and it made it easy for us to punch it in. There were times where Andy Dalton was spot on with his throws, and then there were other times where the running game wasn't there. And I think that's when Kellen Moore on some plays had to go into his bag and try and pull out a few gadget plays, but luckily those didn't cost us. Defensively, who are these guys? I mean, 4 turnovers yesterday. And we've been talking about getting turnovers all season long, and that just hadn't been something that this Cowboys team has been able to manufacture. But you see how easy it makes the game flow for your offense when you can set them up in prime position. You have a free safety that breaks on a ball. How about that? To get an interception. And Tank Lawrence played his tail off yesterday. And so kudos to the defense. There are a lot of things that obviously we could scrutinize or criticize them for, but look, they mitigated a lot of that stuff and pulled out a great victory.
And whenever it comes to the defense, you have the 4 turnovers, 2 fumbles in the first half, 1 on special teams, 1 on the defensive side of the football. Then you had the 2 picks in the fourth quarter, 1 to Anthony Brown, his first interception of 2020 and his 5th of his career. Then you had Donovan Wilson, like you said, breaking toward the football. And I asked Stephen Jones earlier this week, and I asked him, do you feel like you found that guy? Do you feel like Donovan Wilson is finally that safety that you've been waiting for, the hard hitter, the guy who forces turnovers, and he forces another one in his first game back after missing a couple due to injury, and he looked fine out there. I really did. I thought he looked fantastic. And then you have the secondary coming in and getting some reinforcements. Cheeto Awuzie's back. Trayvon Diggs is back. Anthony Brown is back. And all 4 of those top corners are available at one point in the game. Now, you lost Xavier Woods later on in the matchup yesterday, but with that being said, you had 6 of your DBs. You had your top 6 DBs finally available, Rob. How huge is that for the defense, especially when you're trying to evaluate what that secondary is going to look like going into next season?
Oh, it's absolutely huge. I mean, that's a continuity problem on this roster that we probably haven't talked about enough this year. We've talked about missing Dak. We've talked about the offensive line. We've talked about injuries to the defensive line and moving on from players on the defensive line, but not the secondary as much. And I think you watch Jordan Lewis, who's been kind of the constant the last few games. He's been healthy, and he put together another solid performance in terms of just being around the football, stopping the run, sack. He's been solid in pass coverage. So I think he's one of several guys going into his contract year, and I think he's playing well as the season ends. But yeah, absolutely, continuity's been big. Look, They gave up 458 yards. That is
33 points.
That's the second highest total that they've allowed this year. In San Francisco, we got 150 rushing yards. That was kind of to be expected. wasn't 300. So that was progress. But, that's progress. They cut it in half. They cut it in half. So
yes,
look, you can give up yardage. That's going to happen. But if you can get takeaways, that's how you win games. I mean, Mike McCarthy's not a big stats guy, but turnovers are the leading stat for him. That's what decides football games. He's not wrong. Cowboys had 11 takeaways in the first 12 games. They've got 7 in the last 2 games. It's not a coincidence that they've won 2 games in a row.
Not at all. And good thing that McCarthy isn't a stats guy, because if you look at the offensive stats, they weren't very good. I mean, 291 yards on 58 plays, and you had only the 87 on the ground, 209 for Andy Dalton yesterday. So offensively, the stats weren't there. You weren't very good on third down, 6 of 15, which is 40%. So you have to see some improvement throughout, but you didn't really need this offense, Heckma. I mean, whenever you came to the turnovers, it ended up pushing them into position to where they took advantage. 24 points of their 41 came off of turnovers, and they took advantage whenever they needed to.
In a defensive effort like that, it covers up all of your inadequacies, and that's what it did for the offense. And look, there's still a lot of things that we have to work on. Red zone efficiency still has to be a sticking point for this offense. Like you said, third downs, we were not very good on third downs. But when you get the ball on the 22, it makes it a lot shorter. But also, Andy Dalton did some really good things. You talk about a drive in the third quarter where he goes 15 plays, 73 yards, and it was the drive that he had to put together to get this victory. Kudos to our defensive front, the front 7. It makes it so much easier when your guys are putting pressure on the quarterback and forcing him into errant throws. I mean, Mullen, as a quarterback, man, he was staring it down and just making it easy for our guys on the back half as well. So all things being considered, you talk about the continuity of our secondary and guys having to play, finally having everybody healthy. I think that meant a lot to see those guys playing together, but also Isaiah said this as a sticking point for a lot of these guys that are in their contract years, that the eye in the sky don't lie, and they can't just lay down. They're playing for their careers. And you see guys like Cheeto, Jordan Lewis playing just like that. I'm going to put that tape out there so that everyone sees that I want to be in this league. And I really was, I was proud of guys playing up to their potential. We've been waiting on it, and we finally saw it.
Isaiah?
Yeah, I mean, they did what was required of them. I mean, that's pretty much at the end of the day. Do they need to play better? Absolutely. Could they have had more yards? Absolutely. Could we have, not allowed as many yards? Absolutely. Everything you could say absolutely to, but at the end of the day, it's about getting a W. And once you get the dub, now you can start critiquing and going over all the things that they need to improve upon. But everything that needs to be said, I think, has been said, man. Those guys are everybody stepped their game up. As Heckman talked about, these guys are playing for their careers, very much so. Regardless of what's going on with your team, you got to stand up for yourself, and then yourself turns into multiple guys doing that, and then all of a sudden the team plays better. So that's what we saw yesterday.
And the thing about the takeaways, the Cincinnati game, you could almost, if you're a skeptic, you can argue, Cincinnati gave them those turnovers. They were just careless with the ball. DeMarcus Lawrence made that turnover happen.
Yes.
Yes.
Same thing with Dorrance Armstrong. Mm-hmm. Those 2 picks in the fourth quarter were, reading and reacting and making a play on the ball and being instinctive. And so that's not pure luck, and so that's the sign of a defense that is growing. Whether that makes you happy as a fan with the draft pick or not,
That's right, Rob. And I think for our defense, just seeing them do that makes me believe that they are more comfortable with the scheme. They're learning it. I mean, it's one thing to read and react, but if you're back there and you're guessing on where you need to be and the communication level isn't there, guys couldn't do that before. It just feels like they've simplified their coverages. And we talked about high school coverages. Like, this is just cover 4, right? It's the same. And guys just hadn't been able to master it, but the communication hadn't been there. When you see guys like Anthony Brown break in front of a receiver to get an interception, that's just him being comfortable and knowing I'm in zone and I have a guy behind me, and the same thing with Donovan Wilson. He's understanding the coverage so he can break on the ball. I love that as well. But I have to say, Andy Dalton, for just like a split second there, man, I was having delusions of Andy back in the day. He had his red rifle going there for a quick second. And they, want to call him a bus driver, just, facilitator of the offense. But he was taking what that defense was giving him, which was a lot, and he was always making the good read. So kudos to Andy Dalton for doing that.
Well, you saw in this game what a true backup quarterback in the NFL looks like and what a true starter in the NFL looks like. Now, there are a lot of people that aren't very happy with Andy Dalton because of the losses, because of the interceptions early in his Cowboys tenure. Yeah. But whenever you look at Andy Dalton, he's not Dak Prescott. I mean, you're talking about an elite quarterback, or at least one that's borderline elite for some people. Nobody can argue that he's borderline elite. I think he's elite. But then you have Andy Dalton, who is a true starter in the NFL. Then you have Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins is a backup quarterback. C.J. Beathard is a backup quarterback. Andy Dalton is not that. And you saw that yesterday. And the one turning point, I think, in the game was in the third quarter. It was 24-24. San Francisco had rattled off 10 straight points, and it was third down. Andy Dalton was under pressure, rolled out to his right, and had to escape pressure. It wasn't a designed bootleg by any means, but he looks downfield, toes the sideline, and delivers a dime into a very tight hole to CeeDee Lamb for 45 yards. The next play, Dalton Schultz bings and bangs his way into the end zone from 12 yards out. So that was the turning point in the game, because at that point, San Francisco had all the momentum. They had the 10 points. They were finding a way to get to this offensive line. They were bringing the pressure, and they said, beat us over the top, and that's what Andy Dalton did. He towed that sideline and was able to deliver a ball that not any of those backup quarterbacks throughout the NFL could have potentially done, and that was what ended up, I think, turning the football game around and making San Francisco second-guess themselves whenever it comes to blitzing Andy Dalton and trying to blitz this Cowboys offense, Rob.
Yeah, the chunk play, that you're right. That was huge, and that was a dime. And one thing about the offense, the takeaways for the defense were so big because offensively, Cowboys really needed it. I mean, they had a hard time getting things going. I thought, what you guys are saying about Andy's exactly right. He's doing exactly what he needs to do as coming in as the backup. Don't turn it over. Be solid. Be protective of the football. But they've struggled with the chunk plays recently, and I think they only had 3 in the game. Obviously, Tony Pollard's run at the end was awesome. That was big time, and that sealed the game. But I think the other 2 were to CD. One that you referenced, Kyle, and then the other I think was when he kind of chucked it up to CD on the free play on the false start. So they're still having trouble running the ball. Whether it's Zeke, whether it's Tony Pollard, I think some of it starts up front. But when you've got, like you said, a luxury to have a backup quarterback like Andy who can make that play when the defense gives it to you, and when your defense is balling out like that in terms of giving you the ball with short fields, sometimes all you need is a couple chunk plays. You can win the game that way.
Isaiah?
Yeah, I feel like I would just say the same thing, man. I mean, these guys are. Andy Dalton's doing what's asked of him. We don't have to do anything miraculous. They're making plays when they need to. The chemistry is improving every week. Confidence is building. These guys are getting more familiarized on the defensive side of the ball. That's why you saw them start taking more risks. Donovan Wilson obviously coming up, getting an interception, coming up, almost getting a second interception. He really could have walked away with 2 of those things. All the DBs being back, the continuity that they have, the trust, that's probably a word that needs to be utilized. They're starting to trust each other, whether it's the scheme, they're getting more confident within the scheme, or whether they actually know that each other is going to be where they're supposed to be. Regardless, it's resulting in better play. And then defensive line, those guys are starting to come together as well. Big Gallimore came up there and blew some things up. That was very important for an inside presence. Crawford's being where he's supposed to be. D-Law is coming off playing like he's supposed to play, the guy that we paid him to be. So it's coming together, man. It's coming together, and it's coming together at the right time. Now you just got to keep taking care of business every play, every game, and I hope that Washington lays an egg.
Yeah, I mean, you got to hope for some help at this point. But whenever the Washington football team goes out with Dwayne Haskins, they're not the same team that if they had Alex Smith out there. So things can happen this week against Carolina. Things can happen for the Cowboys against Philadelphia, even though Philly seems like they have a quarterback now, and that's going to be a tough task for the Cowboys coming up. And we'll preview that game throughout the week. We've got shows all the way up until Thursday. But when we come back here on Talkin' Cowboys, was this kind of a smoke smokescreen game for Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. What is going on in terms of the running back game, and how can the Cowboys fare without 21 in the future, should that be a situation? We'll talk about that next when we come back on Talkin Cowboys, presented by Geico.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
Since 1865, Stetson hats are American-made with pride right here in Texas. And Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Want to show your Texas and team pride too? You can. By purchasing your own Stetson, you can look just like how the flag guys do on field at every home game. Stetson hats, the official crown of all self-respecting Cowboys, and your favorite football team.
Get yours today at shop.dallascowboys.com or at stetson.com.
I'm Jay Novacek, former tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Back in the day, I was the guy who always got the tough yards, and that's why I run with John Deere today. In fact, I have a John Deere 3025E tractor that can handle any yard work I need to do, even the tough yards way out back. So if you have 1 acre or 1,000, John Deere has the equipment that's just right for you. Visit a John Deere dealer today and run with us. We are the official tractor provider of your Dallas Cowboys.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Back to Talkin Cowboys.
Back here on Talkin Cowboys, it's a Victory Monday edition from the Star in Frisco. And whether you're watching from home or you're cheering in the stands with Essilor lenses, you'll see every exciting play. You'll see all the beautiful lights on Heckma Harrison's tree, but you'll also see the Essilor experts and do what Essilor can do for you. See more, do more. Essilor here on Talkin Cowboys. As Heckma's got, I love that tree, Heckma. I think it fits. It's a
nice tree, Heckman. Where'd you get it from?
It fills a void.
Man, it had to have come from overseas, man, from where they had this thing packaged. So it's, yeah, you know where I got it.
Mm-hmm. From Christmas Vacation. It's a Butte, Clark. It's a Butte.
Fragile.
Good reference. I like it. But Heckma Harrison, Rob Phillips, Isaiah Stanback, our resident Super Bowl champion and also resident gift giver here on this edition of Talkin Cowboys. Heckma Harrison and the Harrison family some holiday cheer. I'm Kyle Yeomans driving the bus, but we brought up Tony Pollard in the last segment, and Tony had a good game yesterday. Whenever you look at the stats and the final totals for Tony Pollard, 69 yards on 12 carries. He had that long run of 40 later in the game, 2 touchdowns, both on the ground. He also had 6 receptions for 63 yards on 9 targets, and out of those 63 yards, 30 of them came on 1 reception. But Isaiah, whenever it comes to Tony Pollard, and there's so many different ways to think about this because Ezekiel Elliott was inactive for the first time in his career. Now, he had some suspension stuff earlier, but in terms of just being a straight, healthy, or I guess health inactive, he was inactive yesterday because of the calf injury. But a lot of people wanted to see Tony Pollard. What did you see and how he performed yesterday?
I thought he did pretty well. I think Kellen Moore was trying to ensure that he got involved in his game and got involved early. I think that the way in which you typically would use him when he was a 2-headed monster with Zeke, I think you just saw that in just full form yesterday. They tried to feed him the ball. They tried to take him inside. They tried to take him outside. They were really trying to find some gaps. The wide nines didn't present the gaps that we thought they would. but they did find a way to pass the ball to him, and that's where he's sometimes is most effective. You see a lot of times he lined up in the backfield, they motioned him all the way out, to a wide split receiver position, and it really declared the fact that they were in zone. So I'm sure it cleared up a lot of things for Andy Dalton as well. But they were just very diverse in their offerings and the presentation in their form in which they utilized Pollard. I thought it was pretty effective.
Rob?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, the 6 catches, I think going into the game, 2 years in the league now, I think his high was 4 catches in a game. And when they drafted him, we kept hearing about, what he can do as a receiver and what can he do in space. And after seeing that yesterday, especially like Isaiah mentioned early in the game, I'm thinking, let's see more of that. Why haven't we seen more of that? I give Kellen Moore a lot of credit for, I think Heckman mentioned this in the first segment, the red zone. I think they're 3 for 3 in the red zone. He said last week, I've got to be better calling plays in the red zone, and he got creative, and they were able to cash in using Tony as a runner down there. But we saw his full skill set on display, and I don't view this as much of a Tony versus Zeke thing. I wrote about this mid-season. I want to see both of them more. I think with Dak out, you've got to use your running backs more, help out your quarterback, and I think he's proven he can help you in different ways. Now, as a pure running back there, before the 40-yard run, 11 for 29.
Yep.
11 carries for 29 yards. So I think we're seeing, regardless of who's back there, they're missing some guys up front on the offensive line. And I think that's impacting it. But you see his big playability at the end of the game. He's always a threat to bust one, and that's why he needs to play.
Yeah, for the crowd that's going to be saying Zeke who and all of that, slow down, gym shoes.
Agreed.
Okay, because that's not what's going on. Because here's the thing, and Rob, you're exactly right. Before that 40-yard run, he only had 29 yards. So that was big for him in his final numbers. But up until that point, guys, it was the perpetual ineptitude of our running game that you saw. We couldn't get anything going, and maybe it's because of the offensive line. Finally, we get an opportunity to run that. Tony Pollard shows his explosion for that 40-yard game. But still, we're in a situation where we could not establish the running game at all. And it was not for the defense getting us short yardage like that. We may have been in trouble with trying to manufacture long drives. And so, I appreciate what Tony Pollard did. I think that his skill set as a receiver is on full display. All this does for me gives me the reassurance in Tony Pollard and his ability if ever Zeke is inactive because of health. But I think that this gives us more of an incentive to make sure that we balance our running attack with Zeke and Tony Pollard.
Gives you a big...
I have a question.
Go for it.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Carl. I was going to say I have a question for you guys and I guess really for everybody out there. There's so much talk and so much pressure being applied to Zeke and now Tony Pollard. And everybody's like, he's getting paid this, or, we need to see more of this. What do people feel is more important? What do you guys feel is more important? Which one has the biggest effect on the run? Is it the running back or is it the blockers in front of the running back?
The offensive line.
Blockers?
The offensive line.
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk around Zeke and Zeke's fell off and he's not as effective as he used to be. And like, understand this, people. Understand this. If you're playing with your third string offensive line, and that third string offensive line is playing against the first string or even the second string defensive line, guess what? The holes just aren't going to be there. Right? I'm not going to be as effective as a back because I don't have the holes that I had before. Right? So it doesn't matter if Zeke's in there, it doesn't matter if Pollard's in there. I know we're talking about how Pollard only had 11 carries, with 29 yards before the big run, but the reality is it doesn't matter who you put back there. Okay, Kyle can get back there and put on a helmet, right? and put on his SLRs and try to hit the gap.
I can hit that gap anyways.
The thing is, you can try to. You're probably going to butt fumble like the other guys did last week, But
like Gio,
the thing is, if the holes aren't there, you can't run. It doesn't matter how great of a running back that you have on your roster. So as much attention is being placed on these guys, that's why I say that Kellen Moore did a heck of a job this week in utilizing Pollard's assets and his abilities, simply because, hey, guess what? Running into the back of guys is not going to work, right? So Let's try this, right? And let's try this. And guess what? Pollard can also catch the ball. So let's put him out here. So let's utilize him in all these different ways because our offensive line, honestly, just isn't creating the same holes.
I completely agree with you.
And also defensive scheme.
Completely agree with you. Here, I'm going to stick with this really quickly, Heckma, because I want to add to what Isaiah just said. But Tony Pollard did exactly what you want Tony Pollard to do. That's exactly what you brought him in to do. You want him to run every once in a while, then break a big play, right? His big play ability is what makes Tony Pollard special. What allows him to make those big plays, he's done it with Zeke throughout his career. I mean, Zeke is the one that sets up the big play for Tony Pollard. Yep. Zeke can break a big play every now and again. We've seen it throughout his career. The only argument that I think you have, Isaiah, whenever it comes to Ezekiel Elliott, it's not that he's a better football player than Tony Pollard. That's obvious, I think. At least I think all four of us would agree Ezekiel Elliott is better than Tony Pollard. But whenever it comes to his contract is what tells him that he needs to be more elite and not just a runner. He needs to be elite behind no matter who's blocking for him. And that's where I think the frustration comes from Cowboys fans. And yes, we've talked about this before, and I feel like it's a broken record, but it's a debate that's going to continue into the offseason because there's decisions that have to be made around that contract and where that salary cap is going to be allocated. And Tony Pollard yesterday didn't really do a ton for my confidence in terms of how this team can fare without Ezekiel Elliott, because 11 carries for 29 yards before he broke the 40-yarder at the end of the game does not make me confident in this running game, no matter if it's Heckma Harrison and Rob Phillips blocking for Tony Pollard up front, or if it's the starting offensive line. You got to be able to run more efficiently than 11 for 29, and they finally broke one right at the end.
You're absolutely correct. But my question to you and everybody is, how can you, if you're not a shifty back, right? If you're not a LaShawn McCoy, if you're not a Barry Sanders, if you're not one of these elusive backs, which is not what Zeke is, right? How can you be exceptional if you don't have the holes to hit? Right, if you take the fumbles out of Zeke's season this year, right? Because that's what everybody's leaning on. Oh, he's fumbling the ball. You have bad games, okay? If you take the fumbles out, what do you expect him to do if there aren't any holes? He's not that type of back. And people are asking, well, why do you pay him all that money? Because he always falls forward, guys. He always falls forward, and he's a threat. He blocks really well when the teams decide to blitz. Right? I'm going to blitz a little bit more, just like we saw yesterday, right? The offensive line did a good job for the most part. He only got sacked twice, I think, Andy Dalton. But you blitz a little bit more when you know that Zeke's not back there to fill the gap on that linebacker or that safety coming through the hole. I'm going to send my guys a few more times because guess what? I might get home, right? But when I have Pollard back there or somebody else who's not as great as blocking, guess what? I'm going to send those guys. But when I see Zeke, it's just not worth it because we're probably not going to get home, right? So he helps you in the passing game in that regard. Maybe not in the form of receptions, but in terms of protection, he helps you. He helps Dak. He helps, Dalton. He helps all these guys. Whoever's in the doggone position or quarterback, he helps them. When it comes to running the ball, Zeke is going to fall forward. He's going to bust you in the mouth. It's no different than doggone Marshawn, my dog Marshawn. It was going to be physical. You knew what you were getting into when you played against Seattle back then. He was going to hit you in the mouth, whether he got outside the tackles or not. You knew you were going to have a hard time bringing him down, right? And that's what he brought to the game. That's what Zeke brings to the game. The physicality. He's not going to be shifty, so stop expecting that from him. He's going to shore up the fumbles. Of course, any running back needs to do that. But let's stop. I mean, people need to stop talking about, he's not as effective. No, he's not, because he's playing with his third string guys.
And I don't think he's been healthy for a few weeks either, Heck.
Yeah.
Hey, Kyle got Isaiah's blood pressure up right now.
Yeah, he did.
Well, I've actually got one more thing to get his blood pressure up. Just one more thing.
Come on,
you want me to? You want me to keep this going? Isaiah, how much does the offensive line affect fumbles for Ezekiel Elliott? How much? How much does the offensive line affect the fumbles? Because that's another big thing for Zeke's game dropping off in 2020. He has fumbled the ball twice as much more.
I mentioned that.
I know you did, but I'm just saying, how do you correlate that? Whenever it comes to a $90 million running back that you're paying to fall forward 1 yard, you got to hold on to the football.
Absolutely. So check me out. So let's freaking talk about it, okay? So let's talk about it. I'm not somebody to place blame anywhere. You guys know I take full accountability for anything I said. I stand behind everything. So Zeke fumbled the ball entirely too much this year. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And guess what? I guarantee you he'll figure that out. He has figured that out, right? Since he had those issues. He hasn't fumbled anymore. He's human. Humans make mistakes, right? Humans make mistakes. I don't care how much you're getting paid.
$90 million
Elon Musk makes mistakes. Jeff Bezos makes mistakes, right? Everybody makes mistakes. So let's not act like he's just superhuman that's just not going to fumble the ball. He has to tidy those things up. There's aspects of his game that he has to improve upon. Can you believe that? Can you believe that he has to improve in certain aspects of his game? So yes, he has to tighten that up, right? But he is still a super effective running back. I don't care how much you're paying him. And no, the offensive lineman can't make him fumble. No, unless you're fumbling off somebody's butt. Okay, but what they can do is take it to the point where he's so frustrated with his inability to get holes and to be able to get across the line of scrimmage to now he's doing things that are outside of himself. When he starts doing things that are outside of himself, guess what? The ball security stops becoming as important as it once was, because now I'm trying to figure out a way to get across the line of scrimmage. I'm trying to figure out a way to make a big play. So the things in which I used to focus on, I'm no longer focusing on because I'm trying to make other things happen. So no, they can't. But yes, they do affect it because now he's doing things outside of himself.
Heck, well, you haven't talked in a while.
Tostitos. It's not Tostitos here right now.
It's not. Fine. It's hot right now. I like it. But, I think what you're asking, and I think a lot of people, when it comes down to Zeke, they are football illusionists, right? You think that this guy is supposed to be the same guy that he was 4 years ago with that great offensive line behind.
That's what his contract says he's supposed to be, though.
No.
No, the contract is what it is. The contract's signed.
I'm mistaken.
Yeah, it's what it is his inability to do all of the things that are in his wheelhouse to do because of the guys up front not being able to get their job done. I promise you, Kyle, this show wouldn't work as fluid as it does if you came up short on your job as the host, right? There would be some things that we wouldn't be able to do. That's the same thing for your offensive line. It's hand in glove. These things work together. So for you to not give credence to one thing and then spot and say, oh, you're making all this money to actually do this, it doesn't matter. If he doesn't have an offensive line to create those holes, it's hard for any running back to do that. Now, as a wide receiver, if you have a quarterback that can just get back there and throw that thing 80 yards, and you have a guy like Megatron or a fast twitch guy that can go get the ball, that may be a whole nother subject entirely. All right. When you look at Cooper and his numbers, maybe you can relate that to that. But to say that the money that Zeke is getting paid is in some way he's at fault for earning that contract, and now he's not living up to it because he's running behind the third and fourth string offensive line, I think that's short-sighted. And I think for that, man, I think it's people that don't really understand the game of football and what guys have to do in order to be good in this league.
And you know what? The contract is what it is, man. Like they were trying to win it. They were trying to win a Super Bowl last year. They thought they had a Super Bowl team. They needed to get him back into camp, and they thought he earned it anyway. And I think it's been a weird year to evaluate him on a lot of levels. I'm not saying he's had a good year. By his standards, it hasn't been a good year. You look at his numbers, you look at his fumbles, you guys have covered that. I would say I thought he ran the ball pretty well early in the season when most of the offense was healthy. But they got behind in games. Some of that was his fault with fumbles. And it was hard to really evaluate the running game as a whole. And then now there's so many guys missing, I think it's even harder to evaluate it. So I'm not giving him a full mulligan for this season, but I do think when they're healthy as a group next year, I think you're going to see a better Zeke, and I think you're going to see a better offense. And hopefully they're not turning it over and they've got some leads, and that's when you can really bring his game into play instead of, you're trying to score 50 points to beat the Falcons like you did early in the season.
I agree. I think 2021 will be a better year for Ezekiel Elliott, but it's tough right now because of the frustration with him, the frustration, of course, that it kind of built up from the fumbles and all of the things that go into that. But I like the debate. I really do. I think it is a debate because the contract is what it is, like you said, Rob. It's signed, it's sealed, it's delivered, it's going to be there no matter what. And sure, there are some decisions down the road that could be made to maybe counteract that, but it's going to be tough to do that anyways. And then you have Ezekiel Elliott, who can continue to evolve as a running back, and hopefully he evolves upwards rather than downwards whenever we come back and look at this later on, maybe into the offseason and into 2021. But when we come back here on Talking Cowboys, how are those playoff chances looking? Rob said 5%, but I want to see exactly what you guys think the percentage is in terms of the Cowboys making the playoffs as NFC East champions. We'll talk about it next when we come back on Talking Cowboys, presented by Geico.
We're back with a tasty treat that's sweeping airwaves and taste buds. It's new Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda. Let's take a listen.
Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda's here. A new combo that's music to my ears, okay. Let's play. Cream Soda and Dr. Pepper time. Pour it in a glass of ice.
Ah, music to my ears and mouth. New Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda.
A delicious duet.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
The Cowboys way, where 16 Hall of Famers and 5 championships shows us what success looks like. Where turkey is always the second best part of Thanksgiving Day. Where we are all defined by one single thing, the star. Where we as fans know it's our job to keep the tradition going. Bank of America is proud to be the official bank of the Dallas Cowboys and to support the quest of living life the Cowboys way. Copyright 2020, Bank of America Corporation.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Back to Talkin' Cowboys.
Whether you're listening to Talking Cowboys at home or you're working out, with Bose Quiet Comfort earbuds, you can experience audio at a whole new level. You can't quite hear the lights on Heckma Harrison's tree, but you can certainly see them on the website with your headphones on and have that whole experience around Bose Quiet Comfort earbuds, the official earbuds of the NFL. Welcome back into Talking Second Place Cowboys, presented by Geico here on a Victory Monday. The Cowboys now improved to 5-9 with their 41-33 win over the San Francisco 49ers, and what was really a fun game. Rob, you mentioned it earlier, talking about shame on NBC of flexing that football game, because it actually was a really fun game.
Nah, I'm just kidding.
I agree that they should have flexed it at that point, but I mean, it ended up being a better game than what they got last night whenever Cleveland took down New York 20-6, and that thus puts the Cowboys at second place in the NFC East at the moment, 1 game back of Washington with 2 games to play. And I mentioned right up at the top of the show that Washington has Carolina, then Philly, the final 2 weeks of the season. The Cowboys have Philadelphia coming up this Sunday at 3:25, and then they've got the Giants at noon kickoff back after the new year on January 3rd. So there's a lot riding on this week. Week 16 is most likely going to decide who wins this division between 3 teams. The Cowboys, the Washington football team, and the New York Giants. Maybe the Eagles if you really wanted to throw them in there, but I think they're pretty much out of it as well. But whenever you look at this division, Rob, you said 5% chance from the New York Times model. What would your percentage be for the Cowboys? Because if you beat Philly and somehow those Carolina Panthers go after and beat Washington, you are really sitting in a pretty good spot going into the final week of the year.
Yeah, I think the thing about it is I would put it above 5%. I think it's New York Times had 1% last week by their model, and it was ESPN 538 with 5% today. So I put it above 5%, but so much has to go right for the Cowboys. And Washington, if they get Alex Smith back this week, if they get Antonio Gibson back, they get some guys back, kind of feel like they can beat Carolina. Now, Carolina's lost some, I think, 3 pretty close games in a row. They might be due, but the Cowboys just need so much help. But the thing about it is, I think all 3 teams, even all 4 teams, if you want to count Philly, you just don't really know what you're going to get from any of the 4 teams week to week. So you can't really feel confident in anything. It doesn't seem like a great chance for the Cowboys still, but it does kind of feel like, that Cleveland Golden State series in 2016 where it was like, Golden State's up 3-1 and all of a sudden it's 3-2 and it's like, you think they still got it, but you never know. You never know.
Heckma?
No, don't bring the trophy out yet, like in that Cleveland series.
Yeah, thanks, Draymond.
I mean, for the Cowboys, they just have to have blinders on. They have to have blinders on and control what they can control. There's so much going on, and they don't know anything. They can't game plan for Carolina for the Washington football team. They can't do any of that. So just getting to the game plan for Sunday against a quarterback that is going to they're going to be a threat for our defense. They just have to control that. And so looking too far ahead and talking about the help and percentages and all that stuff, I'm sure this team, they won't accept it. And I'm sure Coach Mike McCarthy won't accept any of it either.
I'm going to put mine at 43%.
Wow, that's pretty high.
43%, yeah. I actually feel pretty good about it, man. I think if Carolina's going to get up for any game, what game would they get up for?
Their former head coach.
Their former head coach.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think there's a lot more than just a regular football game this coming week for them. Obviously, and a thing for us, we've already faced a number of running quarterbacks this year, so I think we should feel pretty good about going against Jalen Hurts. And then going into that last week, obviously we know what would be writing on that game for us. But in terms of Washington, Philadelphia will have an opportunity at that moment to really just kill their whole season. So I think they have 2 tough games. They have a rivalry game within their coaches here coming up, and then they'll be playing against a team that is going to literally try to send them home packing. So they have 2 rough weeks, and we have 2 weeks in which we have nothing but motivation.
Nothing but motivation. It'll be tough to slow down Jalen Hurts. This guy's not just a running quarterback anymore. I mean, he had 3 touchdown passes in the first half against Arizona to come back and get back within that game. I think that's going to be a fun matchup.
No disrespect. No disrespect by that. I'm talking about like we Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray. We've already faced these guys, right, who have the ability to do both.
Lamar.
Who are both probably, overall better. They're better quarterbacks than he is at this point. So I think that we're probably better prepared to face a quarterback like Jalen Hurts than majority of the teams that Philly's facing right now.
I agree. I definitely agree. I think there's a lot that goes into that, and we're going to break down that game coming up later in the week. Remember, though, send in your fan questions for tomorrow, as it's a Fans on the 50 Tuesday. We've got shows Wednesday and Thursday as well. We'll be off for Christmas Day on Friday. But once again, the Cowboys get a 41-33 win over the San Francisco 49ers, and my guy Jay on the chat reminded me, I want to say a shout-out to, how about Dez Bryant? Instead of doing this, how about the touchdown catch for Dez and doing the X for Dez Bryant as he caught a touchdown pass yesterday for the first time in 3 years. That's fantastic. Very happy for Dez, and cool to see that and his comeback really kind of complete, or at least you see his arrival again with that touchdown pass yesterday. But that's going to do it for us here on Talkin Cowboys. Thanks for joining us here over the last 45 minutes. For Chris Beam, doing great work as always in the back for Heckma Harrison, Rob Phillips, and for Isaiah Stanback, I'm Kyle Yeoman saying so long. We'll see you tomorrow morning on Talkin Cowboys, presented by Geico.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!